Hi, very good morning. Happy Guru Purnima to all of you. Yes, today on this happy Guru Purnima day, I'm preparing one video lecture on the common joint disorders or we call arthritis in your everyday practice and how you manage. So I'm Dr. Janak Patel. Today I'll be taking on a topic we call as a management of different common arthritis you see in your everyday practice. So we'll be just going through that particular. So it is an approach to arthritis, but what are the common diseases which you come across in your everyday practice? So treatment and complications, we'll be dealing with that. Now this is one combined together, different varieties of arthritis are mentioned here. What will be the patient profile? What will be the history? Which joints will be involved? What is the type of arthritis? And what are the supportive tests which has been compiled together? So you can just go through at your leisure time. It is a very nice thing. You can go through say common osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, gout. These three are very common. So just go through that. Some of those pseudo gout etc. you will rarely see, but have a just look at this particular. It is a very nice way of differentiating all those things. Now we'll be talking most common is rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, gout. These three comes topmost on the list. So we'll be discussing these three. Little bit regarding aseptic arthritis, little bit regarding SLE, spondyloarthritis, viral and chikungunya. These are the common which you will see in your everyday practice. So we'll be going through one by one. Now there are some criteria which should be fulfilled if you want to label a person as a rheumatoid arthritis. We say that there should be minimum 4 or more than 4 criteria, and that criteria should be present for more than 6 weeks. What are those criteria? They are out of this. So what are those criteria? 1. Morning stiffness more than 1 hour. Arthritis, we call it a polyarticular, more than 3 joints involved. Which are those joints involved? Metacarpophalangeal joint, proximal interphalangeal joint, ankle, wrist, elbow, and metatarsophalangeal joints. These are the common joints which are involved. So anytime more than 3, ideally we say that more than 5. It is always a polyarticular and symmetrical. And most common joint which are involved are of hands. That is metacarpophalangeal joint, PIP and wrist joint. These are the 3 common joints which are most commonly involved. Ankle, not so common. Knee, not so common. But they are also involved. They are also involved. It is always symmetrical, by and large symmetrical. And if you do a laboratory investigation, RA factor will be positive. But RA factor may be positive only 50 to 60% of the people. You will have 30 to 40% of the people will be RA negative. On other examinations, we call extra-articular manifestation like rheumatic nodules. On radiological examination, you will get erosion, osteopenia, etc. So out of all this, at least 4 criteria should be present for more than 6 weeks. Then you can label that as rheumatoid arthritis, and this is called ACR criteria. ACR criteria. So that is what is being commonly utilized. Now this is again ACR criteria which they have given in 2010, and they give points. Joint involvement, serology study, acute phase reactant study, and duration of symptoms. So depending upon the joint, medium to large joint involved, 0. If it is 2 to 10, only one large joint involved, 0. 2 to 10, medium to light joint involved, 1 point. Small joints involved, up to 3, 2 points. more than 4 up to 10, 3, and more than 10, 5 points. Serology, negative we call rheumatoid factors, and negative anti-CCP, 0. Low positive, 2 points, and highly positive, 3. Acute phase CRP negative, 0, and CRP positive, 1. Duration less than 6 weeks, 0. Duration more than 6 weeks, 1. Now, when you take all these criteria, and if it is more than 6 points, straightforward it goes for rheumatoid arthritis. So you know that if there are polyarticular, more than 5 joints, and by and large if you come across, we have got 5 knuckles and thumb, and if you compare the two together, it will become 10. So 5 is already here, and if it is more than 6 weeks, straightforward it becomes rheumatoid arthritis. You do not require a serological, you do not require an acute phase reactant. And in this, there is no inclusion of radiological study. So this is one way of scoring the algorithm to identify a cutout point in a rheumatoid arthritis. Now this is also another way of scoring the same, what we have mentioned before. Joint involved, B serology, third duration of symptoms, acute phase reactant. More than 6, and this was in 2010 by European League Association against Rheumatism, American College of Rheumatology. So this was their criteria. Now this is another criteria which can be utilized depending upon which joint is involved and what is the possibility. Elbow involved 50%, wrist 80%, then small joints involved 90% chances, PIP involved 90% chances, metatarsophalangeal joints involved 90% chances, ankle involved in 40% of the people. So this particular helps you a lot. Very rarely you can see the percentage of TM joint involvement. TM joint, temporomandibular joint, only in 25% of the people. Acromioclavicular joint, only in 50%. Then shoulder joint in 60%. Cervical spine in 35%. Hip in 40%. These are very low. Highest, small joints of hand and small joints of foot. Highest those cases. And see the knee in 75%, ankle in 40%, but wrist in 80%. So wrist, small joints of hands and small joints of foot becomes the most common conditions. Now disease activity score, it is called as a DAS score, DAS score, and they use different criterias, and these are all the different joints which you should look for, and you count the number of the tender joints, count the number of the swollen joints, ESR, ask for the global activity of the arthritis, etc. These are all those things which are being utilized, and you try to score. Yes, this is utilized mainly for prognostic purpose. When you are putting someone on a treatment, you utilize for that purpose. I have already shown you this slide in a previous part 1. In an early stage, you get just mild swelling, we call arthritis. In an intermediate stage, you start getting little arthritis with little deformity. And in a late stage, you will get all deformities. Swan neck deformity, Butenor deformity, and Jed deformity. All those deformity you can see. Here again you can see those rheumatic nodules, rheumatoid nodules. Can you see these nodules? These are typical nodules. And sometimes you can see even the skin changes. And this is typical what we call as a Butenor deformity. This is swan neck deformity. Butenor means at PIP joint, proximal interphalangeal joint, you get flexion, and at DIP joint, distal hyperextension, while here in proximal you get hyperextension and in distal you get flexion. This is swan neck, this is typical swan neck, this is Butenor deformities. And in a thumb, if you get a peculiar deformities like this, flexion at PIP and extension, hyperextension at distal phalangeal joint, that will be what we call as a Jed deformities. These are the three common deformities you can see in a upper limb, and try to identify ulnar deviation at wrist, knuckle subluxation. Sometimes you get this subluxation, you get a wrist subluxation also. This is swan neck deformity. This is Butenor deformities, that is flexion at this joint, hyperextension at this distal joint. Here hyperextension, flexion at this joint, and you can get jet-shaped deformity, flexion here, hyperextension here. So these are all the different types of deformities you can see in a case of a rheumatoid arthritis. As far as foot is concerned, you can get hallux valgus, that is you get abduction deformity at the first tarsal. This is tarsal bone, metatarsal phalangeal joint. You can get hammer toe, you can get rheumatic nodules, you can get a rare foot valgus deformity. You can see a slight angulation here. This you can get. These are all the things you can get. Valgus deformity, arch flattening, splay foots, plus this hallux valgus, hammer toe, etc. These are the things which you can get, and this will produce change in gait, pain, loss of function, etc. These are part and parcel of rheumatoid arthritis, and this is usually seen in a chronic stage. If along with rheumatoid arthritis you get this what is called SANTA, splenomegaly, anemia, neutropenia, thrombocytopenia, means this we call as a pancytopenia, which is because of splenomegaly, and then we call that as a Feltis syndrome. So Feltis syndrome is a rare condition which rheumatoid arthritis is associated with pancytopenia, thrombocytopenia, neutropenia, anemia plus splenomegaly, and then we call that as Feltis syndrome. Now there is one disease we call as a Still's disease. In a Still's disease, the major criteria: temperature more than 1 week, leukocytosis, typical rash, these are the typical rash you come across, and there will be arthralgia for more than 2 weeks. As far as minor criteria is concerned, there is a sore throat, lymph node enlargement, splenomegaly, liver dysfunction, and negative ANA and RA factor. When you come across this particular presence of 5 or more criteria, this will tell you that this is more likely to be Still's disease. So you can have a similar type of presentation which can be there in a person who is having this particular disorder. Juvenile rheumatoid arthritis is usually common in a younger children, or we call below 16 years age under 16 years, and it is lasting for more than 6 weeks to 3 months. Usually person will have a rash, RA factor positive, extra-articular manifestation like iridocyclitis, they might have a cervical spine involvement, and among the extra-articular pericarditis, tenosynovitis, fever and morning stiffness is quite common, and this is given a name juvenile chronic arthritis because it leads to a lot of deformities, and in this particular people you can have a large joint involvement like knee, ankle, elbow, etc., which is a little different from a classical rheumatoid arthritis. So there is another group we call as a juvenile idiopathic arthritis, which can be pauciarticular, can be polyarticular, and there can be systemic onset. You can have a seropositive in polyarticular, seronegative. Seropositive polyarthritis is there, while in seronegative it can be because of polyarthritis rheumatoid factor or because of psoriatic arthritis, and in a pauci it can be oligoarthritis or only tendon involvement. So these are the different types of arthritis you can come across in a juvenile group, and they are labeled into one group called juvenile idiopathic arthritis, that is pauciarticular or polyarticular depending upon that. And this is evaluation of a persistent polyarthritis in a person, and whenever you get that, always first, if it is, we have already given you the criteria: bilateral symmetrical polyarticular more than 6 weeks 6 months, sorry, plus If RA factor is positive, radiological finding is there, rheumatoid nodules are there, it is in favor. So clinical examination gives you lot of answers, supported by what we call as a C-reactive protein and ESR, RA factor, and radiological investigation. This may be present, may not be present. But if four factors, out of all these factors, four factors are present, more than 6 months, straightforward it goes in favor of rheumatoid arthritis. And once you diagnose that, you will have to educate the person. You put them on what we call as a symptomatic treatment. And now, depending upon the severity, you can start with the treatment. And the treatment what is being usually started is DMRD, we call it DMRD. So one, in a mild variety, you can put them on a hydroxychloroquine. If a person only on hydroxychloroquine getting a good response, you can review the symptoms again. But if he is getting an inadequate response or person is having a severe disease, you can start with methotrexate, hydroxychloroquine combined with sulfasalazine. Some person starts hydroxychloroquine with only methotrexate, or some starts with 3 drugs. Usually methotrexate is the commonest which is being utilized, and hydroxychloroquine is the second common. Third common is sulfasalazine, and leflunomide is not commonly utilized. 2 reasons: one, toxicity, and second, because of high cost. So this is there. And in patient who does not get a good response, then you try to go for other groups like cyclosporine, intramuscular gold preparation, azathioprine, or steroid. Out of this, steroid is usually utilized for a short period. It is not continued for a longer period. Now, by and large, intramuscular gold is not commonly utilized. You can use azathioprine or cyclosporine. Now, the second common material which is very commonly being utilized, we call as TNF-alpha agents, which are biological agents, which are TNF-alpha antagonist, and one of those compound is etanercept and infliximab. These are the drugs which are commonly utilized. These are the last resort. Costly, plus they are not commonly utilized. You require a regular follow-up. All those things are absolutely necessary when you use this particular group of compound we call biological agents. Now this is a pyramid which is being there. Any person who comes to you with the symptoms, mild to moderate symptoms, usually you use salicylates, NSAID, etc. in those particular, with physiotherapy, patient educations. If person has got a severe disease at the onset, yes, analgesic is used, and you directly go to the second stage, what we call as a, you can give sometime a low dose of corticosteroid for a short period to give them a symptomatic relief. But basically, once the person is having a severe symptoms and signs, and if this does not produce any effect, you will have to go to methotrexate, hydroxychloroquine, sulfasalazine, or leflunomide. These are the 4 drugs. Out of this, use any 2. Go to the maximum therapeutic dose and wait for some period. Wait for minimum 3 to 6 months to get the results. If you don't get results, then in some person you can use intraarticular steroids, and you can go to azathioprine, or you can go to D-penicillamine, cyclosporine, etc. And if this does not produce a response, then you can go to what we call as a biological agents, which are TNF-alpha antagonist. So this is the common way you go for. Now, I'll be talking only of methotrexate, hydroxychloroquine, which are the 2 most common being utilized. Methotrexate you can give injectable or oral. The maximum dose is 25 milligram per week. By and large, the larger the dose, the toxicities are more. So as far as possible, use the optimum dose. Start with 10 milligram and increase the dose gradually. So that is in a methotrexate. Oral is always better than injectable. In a person who is very irregular, give injectable. But give him an advice that it produces lot of side effects. He needs a regular checkup. The commonest side effect is GI upset, stomatitis, rash, alopecia, hepatotoxicity, respiratory complication like pneumonitis. You must do regular follow-up by CBC and liver function test. These two are a must. And after initial monthly, every 3 months, you should go and repeat this particular test. Sulfasalazine is not very common drug which is being utilized. You can go up to 4 gram per day. And common side effects are GI side effects like nausea, GI upset, occasionally hepatitis, rash, neutropenia, pancytopenia. Hence, you require a CBC and liver function test first monthly up to 3 months, and then if the person is stable now, you can repeat every 3 months. Hydroxychloroquine usually does not produce much amount of side effects, but still there are some side effects. Maximum dose is 400 milligram. You give it in a BID doses to reduce the GI side effects. In GI side effects, nausea, diarrhea, some person can complain of headache, corneal deposits, retinopathy, which is rare. Person can develop a complications like visual acuity disturbances. So you should have a regular checkup. Usually they say that 6 month or 12 months checkup for retina and fundoscopy. Visual acuity and fundoscopy should be done at a regular interval. By and large, the person will complain of he has got change in the acuity of vision very frequently. And if that is there, you should have a checkup. Eye checkup must be done. So these three are the commonest compound. Leflunomide is a costly plus lot of side effects. That's why the side effects are nausea, GI upset, rash, hepatitis, hypertension. So again here CBC, LFT and regular blood pressure checkup every 2 to 4 weeks should be done. Maximum dose in a day is 20 milligram. Now if this does not work, you can go for leflunomide. The cost is very high. These three are the compound. When this does not work, then D-penicillamine, gold preparation and cyclosporine, out of which cyclosporine is more commonly utilized. So depending upon the results, you can go from methotrexate, hydroxychloroquine combination to triple combination, and if this does not work, you combine, you skip one and add leflunomide, and if that does not work, either cyclosporine or D-penicillamine or a gold, because they have got more toxicity. So try to select a patient properly. Now we come to the second big group, which is we call as osteoarthritis. Most common form of arthritis, more common than even rheumatoid arthritis, and it is more common in the middle age and old age group. There is always associated functional disorders. So the function of the joint is markedly impaired, and as the age advances, impairment increases, and prevalence is higher and higher as the age increases. So higher the age, the prevalence is more, and as the age advances, there is a chance of involvement of the PIP joint and DIP joint. We call Herberdens node, and you get the involvement of this, what we call is a PIP joint and DIP joints. So you get that particular involvement, osteoarthritis, and this is the criteria which are being utilized. What findings you come across in hand, what findings you come across in knee, what are the findings, clinical findings and radiological findings, and what are the findings in hip. At your leisure time, you can go through. I'm not going in detail. It is by again an American College of Rheumatology, which has given a radiological and clinical criteria for osteoarthritis. Osteoarthritis. I'll just talk little bit regarding a knee joint. Mainly on a clinical ground only you can diagnose. Person complains of arthralgia, most commonly in a knee. and person will have a morning stiffness which will be less than 30 minutes. Crepitus will be present. Morning stiffness is less than 30 minutes. Bony enlargements are there. There will be osteophytes and person will have a local tenderness. Age is always more than 38 plus. If you look in this particular group of people, the pain will be aggravated by movements of the joint, by an activity of the joint, and pain will be partially relieved if a person takes rest. And this helps you. And in a radiology, if you get osteophytes, reduction in a joint space, etc., it will help you. So when you combine clinical plus radiological, these are the criteria you utilize. And for diagnosis, you will require 1 plus 2, or they call 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 6. 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 6. So depending upon that, you will say that this is in favor of osteoarthritis. So knee pain is always common in all. Osteophytes in a radiological investigation. As far as age, morning stiffness and crepitus is concerned, these are the more common finding which you can see in a clinical, very easy to identify. So you require 1 plus 4, 5, 4 plus 5 plus 6, these are all clinical. 1 is clinical, 4 is clinical, 5 is clinical, 6 is clinical. So you may not have a radiological and synovial fluid examination, and that will be a way. And most common joint involved is a knee. So try to identify by looking at the knee joint. Now we come across what we call as different findings, what you will see in those particular group: pain, swelling, stiffness, and because of that involvement of the knee, you can have a valgus or varus deformity. The range of the movement is reduced, crepitus, instability, loss of function, muscle spasm, there will be a locking, there will be wasting of muscle, weakness will be there, joint effusion may be present, all those findings will be there. So this will be the common presentation in a case of osteoarthritis. And these are all the different joints which can be involved. And these are what we call as a lot of joints can be there, lot of factors are there: age, stiffness, crepitus, bony tenderness, bony enlargement, no palpable warmth, ESR less than 40, RA factor is negative, and you will have a what we call as a osteoarthritis findings. Is it clear? Synovial fluid. So this will be what will be together, and depending upon the findings, these are X-ray findings. X-rays per present osteoarthritis, absent go for synovial fluid. In a synovial fluid less than 40 years, in favor of osteoarthritis. If the person has got 2 or 3 joints which has got synovial fluid criteria, then and morning stiffness, always look for other. If there is morning stiffness more than 30 minutes, there is no osteoarthritis. Is it clear? And less than 30 minutes, crepitus present. If it is present, osteoarthritis. If crepitus is not there, no osteoarthritis. This is the way you approach. But simple most thing: crepitus present, synovial fluid effusion, or we call presence of synovial fluid, bony enlargement, morning stiffness less than 30 minutes, more in favor of osteoarthritis. And these are all the different joints you can get involvement. All the different joints. Look at these joints. Hip joint can be involved, spine can be involved, knee is involved, foot can be involved. You can have involvement of a small joints like PIP and DIP joints that can be involved. So there are a lot of joints which can be involved. So you have got a Boucher's node, you can have a Herberdens nodes, etc. What is the treatment? Treatment consists of many things. Usually one is physiotherapy and protection of the joints from overloading. So weight loss is advantageous, use of a walking stick, exercise supporting muscles around the joints to avoid wasting. You can use symptomatic treatment like analgesics and NSAID. Some people even inject hyaluronic acid locally, glucosamine, chondroitin is usually not helpful, and you can go for a surgical treatment, that is a replacement. So lifestyle modification, physiotherapy, steroids, support, braces and other supports common. So lifestyle modification, analgesics, NSAID, COX-2 inhibitors. In a worst case, local steroids, opioids orally. You can go for hyaluronic acid injection. Not 100% very effective, but still little benefit you can get, and surgical reference. So injection of hydrocortisone, hyaluronic acid may be tried, but not 100% effective. You can go for arthroscopic. These are surgical, arthroscopic and debridement. Corrective surgery we call alignment. Total or partial joint replacement, and this is the last resort. And some people also use cartilage transplantation, or they use regenerative medicines. These are again partially effective, not 100% effective. So in a surgical treatment, arthroscopy, osteotomy, arthrodesis means you fuse the joint, excision arthroplasty and replacement arthroplasty. Maybe partial or maybe total. You can see here, this is a total replacement, and you can have a partial replacement. Now we go to the third group, that is gout. You know very well, it is also called a disease of king or disease of a rich man, because usually they are more prone to eat high protein diet and lot of wines, and that produces hyperuricemia. So gout is defined as a peripheral arthritis resulting from deposition of monosodium urate crystal, MSU, MSU crystals in one or more joints. So to confirm the diagnosis, you have to demonstrate that in an inflamed joint there is a deposition of MSU crystals. So if you make that, then only a person who has got a hyperuricemia is not labeled as gout. So gout consists of a group of disorders where you got a hyperuricemia plus usually it is a monoarticular acute onset inflammatory arthritis. You might have a tophaceous deposits of urate crystals in and around joints, and interstitial deposition of urate crystals also in a kidney, which will end up with urolithiasis. So if you demonstrate that person has got hyperuricemia with monoarticular acute arthritis due to MSU crystals, then you can label that as gouty arthritis. Otherwise, you label a gout, hyperuricemia, joint involvement, tophi and urolithiasis. We call as urate crystals in urine, and you get a stone formation in a renal parenchyma. So three structures are involved. One, joint, second, kidney, and third, we call subcutaneous tissue, we call tophi. So when you get this, you label that as a gout. But joint involvement because of the monosodium urate crystal, then you can call as a gouty arthritis. So gout, there are 4 steps: hyperuricemia, precipitation of a uric crystals, acute inflammation of joints and surrounding structures, and what we call is a chronic inflammation we call tophi. Hyperuricemia will be because of genetic mutation, because of diet, obesity, renal etiology, excessive alcohol intake. So this will be the first step. Because of hyperuricemia, now you get in a cold temperature, you will get precipitation of these crystals in a joint, and most common joint involved is the first metatarsal joint. And in presence of acidosis, there will be further precipitation. Articular hydration, diuretics can also precipitate. extraarticular protein matrix. It will be deposited in this. So precipitation occurs at a normal or a high uric acid level depending upon the solubility threshold. So low temperature, more precipitation, presence of acidosis, more precipitation, increased diuretic use, more precipitation. So depending upon that, now you get a deposition, and there will be rapid change in the uric acid level in trauma, surgery, drinks, diuretics, chemotherapy, and after stopping allopurinol. So once you starts and you stop, there will be rebound increase in the level of uric acid level. And once it is deposited in a joint or in and around joints, you will start getting what we call as a redness or acute inflammation of joint and surrounding structures, including even skin. And in a case of a chronic, because of this deposition, macrophages are activated, and that macrophages releases inflammatory cytokines, and that will produce acute inflammation. And in a late stages, because of a chronic inflammation, you will have a MSU crystal, monosodium urate crystals, surrounded by granulomatous inflammation, and that we call as a tophi. So that is what you come across. So in a hyperuricemia cascades, you got a urate crystals, which you get from dietary purines, tissue metabolism, that is nucleic acid metabolism, endogenous purine metabolism, overproduction. Under excretion is usually because of renal, kidney, that will produce hyperuricemia. You can have a silent tissue deposition. You can get a gouty manifestation. You can get involvement of the kidney in the form of crystals in the kidney, nephrolithiasis, and even the urate crystals can appear in urine. And very rarely it can involve even a cardiovascular system. This is not common. This is rare. Usually you come across joint, skin manifestation, what we call as a tophi, and tophi is usually seen in a late stages or a we call chronic stages, and you get a kidney involvement. So this is what you come across. So in a clinical features, usually you will come across depending upon this is the age of onset, typical gout and elderly onset of gout. What is the difference? Here usually you come across an acute monoarthritis, while this can be polyarticular. So this will be little difference. The commonest joint which will be involved will be elbow, will be more common than finger. So that will be there. It is more common with obesity, hyperlipidemia, hypertension, heavy alcohol use. So this is very common, and this is seen very typically in a person younger age group. We call peak is in 40. This is after 65, and it's more common in male as compared to female. So that will be the presentation. So these are the different stages of presentation. High uric acid level, acute gouty arthritis, intercritical period, and then you come across what we call as an advanced gout stage, that is tophi. These are classical tophi. Very commonly you see over the ear pinna. This is seen over the ear pinna, very common, and over the joints. This is acute flare. This is acute flare, and between these two, you get intercritical period where you can have a joint involvement, and sometime again you can have an episodes of acute flare. And these are late stages. You can see over this joint involvement. These are tophi, which you can come across. A cheesy material can be seen here. So these are the different pictures. You can see acute gouty arthritis, tophi. You can see these are all tophi. These are tophi. You can see this tophi. So these are tophi which you can see, and this will be seen in the late stages. And the commonest joint involved is the first metatarsal joint, and you will be able to demonstrate monosodium urate crystals, short form we call MSU. And these are those asymptomatic, acute flare, intercritical period, and advanced stage. Now how you manage? So first you have to find out how severe it is. So that is by this particular chart. So you identify mild, moderate or severe, and depending upon that you decide regarding what treatment to be given. And this is the way you approach number of joints involved, polyarticular, and you try to label that as a mild, moderate and severe. So if there is less than 4, it is mild, more than 5 to 6, it is moderate, and more than 7, we call as severe. So identify that particular what joints are involved and according you label. Or you can say that early, well established and late stage during it, depending upon the duration. So you can utilize any one of those. And after identifying that, you will usually go and decide regarding a treatment. There are associated complications because of a gout like stroke, acute myocardial infarction, renal damage, nephropathy, and sometimes you get an deformity because of gout itself also. So first is diet. So there is lot of thing to be discussed in diet. I am not going into detail regarding the diet treatment in case of a gout. So when you start in a management, during acute gouty attack, first is what we call as a analgesics, we call COX-2 inhibitors, plus you use colchicine. That is the first thing what is to be done. Only in the person who is very sensitive to colchicine, you cannot use colchicine. So first, usually you start with a monotherapy. So you use a COX-2 inhibitor or you use a steroid to relieve the inflammation, and you can put them on a colchicine. Colchicine is given for 2 to 3 days. Or some people starts with corticosteroid and colchicine. Very rarely you might require to give an intra-articular steroid. So intra-articular steroid is given only in case of a person who does not respond to corticosteroid and colchicine. Usually that particular should not be the requirement. After giving either NSAID with steroid or NSAID with colchicine or steroid with colchicine, now if a person gets a good response, successful outcome, then you have to educate the person regarding a diet, lifestyle modifications, and then put them on a uricosuric agents. And if a person gets inadequate response, you have to switch to an alternative monotherapy. So if you are using steroid, use colchicine. If you are given a colchicine, then you can go to another drugs like steroids. So try to use that way. Or you will have to add on combination therapy, which will be showing you in the next. So after that, look at the treatment. Again, if there is an inadequate response, that is called as an off-label therapy are in developments. So you can go through that. So initial prophylaxis, low dose of colchicine, starting with 0.6 milligram once or twice a daily, with low dose of NSAID, or colchicine or NSAID is used after initial prophylaxis. And in second line, usually low dose of prednisolone, that is less than 10 milligram per day, can be given. If colchicine and NSAID both are not tolerated or contraindicated or ineffective, then you can use prednisolone. As far as possible, prednisolone should be avoided. As far as possible, prednisolone should be avoided. Now again evaluate for the gout symptoms while the person is on this treatment. Now you can put them on to what we call the anti-inflammatory prophylaxis, and in that particular you can use, we'll show you a chart again, so you can use those particular group of drugs, and treatment has to be continued for at least 6 months. For preventing a flare, use colchicine, NSAID or steroids in an initial stage. Use it for 6 months, whichever is longer. Your target should be there, that serum uric acid should be lowered. So lower the serum uric acid level, and also resolution of a tophi should be also reduced. So that should be your target. So once the target is achieved, you can see switch over to the other group of drugs. Now in that particular group, this is one chart which you follow. That is, you use a colchicine for NSAID in an initial combination. This is a monotherapy. You use either NSAID or you use only colchicine or you use corticosteroid. For mild to moderate, in a severe variety, combination of colchicine with NSAID, colchicine with oral corticosteroid, or NSAID with intraarticular corticosteroid, or colchicine with intraarticular corticosteroids, or oral corticosteroids plus intraarticular corticosteroids. Any permutation combination you can use. And if a treatment outcome is good, if a treatment outcome is successful, then you can follow this dietary modification, lifestyle modification, etc. So that should be done. So this is the common thing what is usually done, and then followed by what we call as urate lowering therapy, ULT, short form we call. Uricosuric agents or xanthine inhibitors or uricase. The commonest drug which is utilized is xanthine oxidase inhibitors. These uricosuric agents are not commonly utilized. Usually the results are not so good with uricosuric agents. So the best drug is xanthine oxidase inhibitors, that is allopurinol and febuxostate. So commonly utilized is febuxostate. This is most commonly utilized drug. You can go maximum up to 80 milligram, and in allopurinol you can go up to 300 milligram. So you can go up to 300 milligram, and this you will have to maintain till you get the results. So febuxostate 40 milligram per day to start with. Allopurinol 100 milligram, you can interchange from allopurinol to febuxostate. Slowly increase the dose and see the target of serum uric acid level, and you can add on other agent like what we call as uricase. So this is usually not commonly utilized. It is little costly. Now we go to another group we call as a pseudo gout. Pseudo gout is also called as a chondrocalcinosis, means there is a calcification in a cartilage. This is very commonly because of one compound, or we call as a one mineral, which is called calcium pyrophosphate dihydrate. Calcium pyrophosphate dihydrate, CPPD crystals, which are deposited in a joint, in a cartilage, and that produces crystal induced inflammation. And this is attacks occurs before the age of 50 are uncommon. So it is usually after the age of 50, and it also mimics identical like gout. That's why it is also called as a pseudo gout. And you identify by a radiology, that is calcification in a hyaline or a fibrocartilage, and that is a characteristics, that is in a meniscus, etc. You get a calcification of a meniscus that tells you that this is chondrocalcinosis. And by a joint aspiration, you demonstrate CPPD crystals or calcium pyrophosphate dihydrate crystals. So when you demonstrate that, then only you say that. And depending upon the commonest presentation, so type A presentation, type B, type C, these are the label given: pseudo gout, pseudo rheumatoid arthritis type of presentation, pseudo osteoarthritis type of presentation, asymptomatic group, pseudo neuropathic joints, etc. These are all the different types of presentation you can come across in case of a CPPD. Diagnostic criteria I am skipping over, made by fluid analysis and radiology. What is a treatment is aspiration of the joint, local steroids, and once diagnosis of infection has been excluded, you can utilize steroid and joint aspiration. That is the most common thing which you can go across. So this is, you can see the calcification here. Calcification is seen here. You can see calcification in a cartilage. So this is called chondrocalcinosis. You can see calcification. You can see calcification here. So when you see that chondrocalcinosis, It is a suspicion of what we call as a pseudo gout. And a commonest treatment what is given is a intra-articular steroids. You can use a symptomatic treatment in the form of NSAID or a COX-2 inhibitors and put them on an oral prednisolone. And that is usually for a short period to relieve the inflammation, acute inflammation. So management is usually local, ice, rest, joint aspiration, local steroid or oral steroids. Colchicine is partially benefited, not a very effective. Intra-articular steroid is also effective. While you can give IV, intramuscular or oral corticosteroids. These are during acute attack, and in a long-term attack, they use colchicine and low dose of NSAID. So correction of a metabolic disease if possible, colchicine is used, low dose steroid. Some people also utilize magnesium cofactor enzymes to break down the pyrophosphates, and hydroxychloroquine and methotrexate, some people do use it, not 100% effective. Septic arthritis is very easy. Person will present to you with a high grade fever, local inflammation, redness, warmness, and severe tenderness with loss of mobility. And this can be due to bacteria, viral, fungal, tuberculosis, etc. But in an acute, by and large, it is a mono joint involvement. Knee joint is the most commonly involved. The best way of making a diagnosis is supportive diagnosis by WBC count, clinical examination and history. But synovial fluid examination, if it shows plenty of pus cells, absence of crystals, culture positive, it will be in favor of what we call as a septic arthritis. And if you do a gram stain, you will be able to detect gram positive or a gram negative organisms. In absence of detection of a bacteria, not a very high cell count, and culture negative, total count not increased in a WBC count, suspect viral. Viral will usually produce more amount of what we call as arthralgia rather than arthritis. Arthralgia is much more common in viral, and it is usually polyarticular rather than monoarticular. Very rarely it is monoarticular. Fungal infection is very rare. It is most commonly nosocomial. And tuberculosis will very commonly involve hip joint, spine, most common. Knee is not a common involvement. So this is regarding a septic. History of fever in 80%, elevated ESR, or we call as a what we call as ESR and CRP will be elevated, inflammatory markers, blood culture will be positive, and even if you do the synovial fluid culture, it will be positive. So pain, redness, restricted movement, constitutional symptoms, resistance to movements, asymmetry, etc. So joint aspiration is a must. You go for gram stain, culture and antibiotic sensitivity. Microscopic examination will demonstrate a bacteria by gram stain, and you will have a plenty of we call as a polymorphs. So that will be in favor of a bacterial infection, and you can see the color here, and absence of crystals. If these are negative and crystal is present, it will be crystal induced arthritis. And treatment will be joint drainage, IV antibiotics, empiric therapy before you do a gram stains, and you give analgesics, articular immobilization for symptomatic treatment. So antibiotic and supportive therapy is a must. Aspiration and drainage should be done, and correction of deformity is if a person has already developed deformities. These are the commonest what we have discussed. Now rheumatic fever is another common, and this is usually seen in the children between 5 to 15 years. I'm just rushing very fast. There are major criteria, minor criteria. We call it the Jones criteria. In major criteria, pancarditis, that is pericarditis, endocarditis, myocarditis, polyarthritis, Sydenham's chorea, or we call St. Vitus dance, subcutaneous nodule, and among skin manifestation, erythema marginatum and erythema nodosum. Among minor criteria, fever, arthralgia, prolonged PR interval, increased ESR or CRP, leukocytosis, etc. These are called as a Jones criteria, and there are now even what we call as a modified Jones criteria. This is erythema marginatum. This is nodules, subcutaneous nodules. And these are the different findings. These are the skin rash, these are nodules, these are skin rash, inflamed joints, chorea can be seen, carditis you can have. So these are the major findings, these are the minor findings. Try to identify them and make a diagnosis of rheumatic fever. We are not discussing regarding the treatment part of rheumatic fever. SLE, to make a diagnosis, always systemic. So you will have a lot of system being involved. Skin getting involved, lung, heart, kidney, joints, blood vessels, etc. So when you get this multiple involvement, and among the skin you get a malar rash. This is a malar rash. You can see this is a malar rash. So when you get this typical malar rash with joint involvement, with multiple serous involvement, that is pleura, pericardium, vasculitis involving kidney, Raynaud's phenomena, do suspect SLE. So this is how we suspect SLE. Now we have got lot of slides which tells you that if there is a 4 criteria out of this 11 criteria, it is in favor of SLE. Just at your leisure time, go through that. So I'm skipping over this because this is a very long topic. So have a pause, look at all these criteria. There are a lot of other slides also. We'll show you that. 4 skin criteria, 2 immunological criteria, 5 organ system involvement, skin, malar rash, discoid rash, photosensitivity, oral ulcer. In immunology, that is blood study, ANA, anti-Smith antibody, DNA antibody, organ-wise CNS, sero involvement, kidney, arthritis, hematological involvement, etc. So out of this 11, any 4 involvement is in favor of SLE. We have got further slides. These are clinical criteria, these are immunological criteria. So again in this, these are 11 and these are another 6. So among this also, at least there should be 1 from clinical and 1 from laboratory criteria, and total criteria should be more than 4. So 3 from this, 1 from this, or 2 from this, 2 from this, whichever. So by and large, these are 3, this is 1. So that tells you that this is in favor of what we call as SL. Is that clear? This is Systemic Lupus International Collaborating Clinics. And these are the percentage. You can see the percentage of what are the clinical findings. Arthralgia is in 95% of the case, fever is in 90%, arthritis is in 90%, extreme fatigue is in 81%, skin rash are in 74%. So you can see these particular findings are in very minimum. Mouth ulcer, what we call as a Raynaud's phenomena, butterfly rash is only in 42%, pleura involvement in 45%, kidney in 50%. But the commonest is arthritis, arthralgia, fever, etc. So try to look for all those findings and a typical rash, typical malar rash. So that is very, very classical. This is Raynaud's phenomena, what you can come across in a case. And these are all the different findings. These are 6, and you can go through the others. These are malar rash, discoid rash, photosensitivity, oral ulcer, arthritis, pericardium pleura involvement, renal, neurological finding, hematological findings, immunological finding, anti-nuclear antibody, etc. If 4 criteria are present, it is more specific. Utilize that. Here, these are all the picture. This is malar rash. These are oral ulcer. This is typical discoid rash. These are hematological finding. That is hemolytic anemia, lymphopenia, thrombocytopenia. This is kidney involvement. We call lupus nephritis. This is neurological involvement, seizures, psychosis, etc. This is photosensitivity, typical skin rash you come across, arthritis, immunological finding, anti-DNA positive, sera involvement, pericardium, pleura involvement, and ANA positive. These are all the typical finding. Out of this 11, any 4 are present, it is in favor. Treatment, like what we call as, in case of rheumatoid arthritis, like steroids, or you can use non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs for symptomatic relief. But for a long-term relief, you will use hydroxychloroquine and cyclophosphamide. Corticosteroid is utilized mainly for severe disease, and para-articular involvement, kidney involvement, sera involvement like pleural cavity, pericardial cavity, etc. in those particular conditions. For malar rash, sunblock creams are utilized. And once in a while, if a person is in a long dose of steroids, particularly say like lupus nephritis, you might get AVN necrosis, avascular necrosis of hip joint, or what we call as a head of femur. So try to keep that thing in mind. So this is in a case of a SLE in short. Now this is the last part what we are dealing, spondyloarthritis. It is a group of disorders. There are a lot of disease which is put together in spondyloarthropathies. That is ankylosing spondylitis, which includes ankylosing spondylitis plus if there is an arthritis with inflammatory bowel disease, juvenile spondylitis, undifferentiated spondyloarthropathy, acute anterior uveitis. It is called SAPHO. I'll give you the entire detail of SAPHO. Psoriatic arthritis, reactive arthritis, etc. All those are included. And in a SAPHO includes synovitis, S for synovitis, A for acne, P for pustules, pustulosis, H for hyperostosis, and O for osteomyelitis. When you get all these 5 together, it is called SAPHO. So sometime you may get all this if a person has got features of ankylosing spondylitis with acne, osteomyelitis, etc. You do suspect SAPHO. So these are the way in a short form it is written. Reactive arthritis is written as R capital E and A capital. This is psoriatic arthritis. It is undifferentiated spondyloarthropathy. Undifferentiated SPA, spondyloarthropathy. This is also called as SPA, spondyloarthropathy. And this is enteropathy, spondyloarthropathy. Enteritis, that is inflammatory bowel disorders. Enteritis, spondyloarthropathy. These are all the different words which are being utilized. You can use whatever way you want. What is the basic thing? The person will have a axial joint involved in this, while in this other. Along with this, you will have a psoriasis. This will be after some infections. This will be with inflammatory bowel disease, etc. So there is an axial involvement, peripheral arthritis, and peripheral enthesitis. Enthesitis means inflammation of tendon, a big tendon. So that is that particular. And in all those group, HLA-B27 may be positive. Enthesitis means it is an extra-articular manifestation, involvement of the joint, and extra-articular manifestation in the form of involvement of tendon. So that particular things if you come across. Axial joint involvement, extra-articular tendon involvement, sacroiliitis, spondylitis, peripheral arthritis usually asymmetrical, and seronegative, that is RA factor negative, anti-CCP negative, but HLA-B27 positive. And if you do ANA, it will be positive. These are all the picture which will tell you if you want to identify what is the extra-articular involvement, which joints are more involved, what is the percentage of involvement, and this is what we call as a critical diagnosis of ankylosing spondylitis, clinical, radiological, etc. You utilize to diagnose a case of ankylosing spondylitis. These are laboratory finding. HLA-B27 is positive in 90% of the people. What we call as an inflammatory marker will be positive. Mild anemia. Person will have a usually elevated alkaline phosphatase. IgA will be elevated. RA factor and NTCCP will be negative. Even ANA may be absent. Even ANA may be absent. So these three, which are commonly done to rule out seropositive groups, that is ANA, NTCCP, and what we call as a RA factor, which will be negative in these groups. So this is extra-articular manifestation: ocular, GI tract, cardiac, renal, neurological, and respiratory. You can have a pause, go through. These are all lot of involvement of extra-articular, and this is very common along with axial spine involvement. So involvement of the spine with that. This is, you can see a psoriasis, involvement of the nail, and then along with that you got the involvement of the joints. You can get an involvement of the joint. It is called dactylitis. Dactylitis. And when the tendon is involved, enthesitis. And when the tendon, tenosynovitis. This is along with the tendon. And when you get a severe damage to the joint, it is called arthritis mutilans. You get a severe deformities like this. You can get a very severe bad deformities. Then you call that as a mutilans. This is dactylitis, or it is also called as a psoas toe, and you get a destruction of the joint. You can see the marks, severe destruction of the joint. So that can be the finding. You get a psoriatic involvement of the nail, skin, and along with that you get the joint involvement. RA factor negative, CCP negative, ESR CRP will be elevated, diagnostic of psoriatic arthritis. And these are all those points which you can utilize to label the severity. And in an X-ray you can call penicillin cup. This will be typical penicillin cup type of a finding. Here this was a better X-ray. You can see this penicillin cup findings. So when you get that particular type of a finding, usually you label that. This is also, you can see this. This looks like a pencil tip, and you can see the deformities. This is also deformities. So that will be there. Reactive arthritis is usually after some episodes before, bacterial infection before. And this is very commonly following chlamydia, that is involving genitals, or involving bowels, like Campylobacterium, Salmonella, Shigella, or Yersinia. So these are the common infections, either genital infections or following bowel infections. You get painful inflammatory arthritis after that particular infections, and that is called reactive arthritis. So it is a triad: urethritis, that is genital infection; arthritis with extra-articular involvement, conjunctivitis. And the commonest organism: chlamydia, Shigella, Salmonella, Campylobacterium, and Yersinia. And once in a while, lymphogranuloma venereum. This is again will produce urethritis. So chlamydia and lymphogranuloma venereum are genital infections. And these are all other extra-articular involvement in a case of a reactive arthritis. You can have asymmetrical oligoarthritis, lower extremities are more commonly involved. You can have involvement of the tendon. You can have sacroiliitis. You can have a skin involvement. You can have a genital ulcers. You can have eye involvement, urinary tract, etc. Lot of other involvements, oral ulcers. These are all the other organs involvement. Gut inflammation, osteoarthritis, osteitis, hyperosteoarthritis, carditis, nephritis, uveitis, conjunctivitis, skin and nail involvement, etc. You can have any one of these involvement. That's why these are all the group where the person will have a joint plus multiple extra-articular involvement. Think of all those groups we have discussed now, spondyloarthritis and that allied groups, and also rheumatoid arthritis with extra-articular involvement. So this is reactive arthritis triad, urethritis, conjunctivitis and arthritis. This is skin involvement, this is genital involvement. So very, very common. You can have eye, genital organs, joint involvement, etc. Radiological, you will have a laboratory parameters. Treatment is usually treatment for genital infections, that is tetracycline. And when it is associated with IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, you will have ankylosing spondylitis features, peripheral arthritis, oligo or chronic polyarthritis. You will have either ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, and you will have oral ulcers and even extra-articular manifestation in the form of eye involvement. In a soft tissue rheumatism, it is very commonly musculoskeletal pain, bursitis, tenosynovitis, tendonitis, and sometimes even the big tendons involvements, anthosynovitis. And there will be a person will be having a fibromyalgia. The treatment required is a local steroid injections. Some are non-inflammatory arthritis, and one of those is Charcot's joint, and this is very commonly in tabes dorsalis, that is syphilis. So do keep it in mind. So you can come across in this occasionally in case of a leprosy, very rarely in meningomyelocele. So it is usually a painless swollen joints, and there is a destruction of a joint. There is a chunks of bone scattered in that particular joint. Usually you require a supports to the joint for supporting mobility and stability. And usually Charcot joints is a contraindication for total joint arthroplasty. This is neuropathic arthropathy, how you undergo clinical findings, etc. in detail. If you are interested, you can undergo and you can go through at your leisure time. This is chronic Charcot's, this is superimposed infection, difference. This is osteomyelitis and active Charcot's, difference. There is one another disorder called onchronosis. This is a degenerative arthritis resulting from alkaptonuria. It is a genetic disorder. Rare condition, absolutely rare, but it should be in the back of your mind. And these are the typical manifestation which you can see clinically. Pigmentations, alkaptonuria producing a black colored urine. You can get a deposition in a sclera. You can get a skin pigmentation, etc. And these are the way you try to make a diagnosis. This is dermatomyositis and mixed connective tissue disorders and systemic sclerosis differentiation. I am not going into detail again. These are all. This is vasculitis producing different types of joint involvements, etc. Maybe a posse involvement, etc. So I am not going into detail at all. So this is ANCA associated disease, then atypical disease. These are all very much in detail. I am skipping over. In general, any person who comes to you with arthritis, always treat the underlying cause. Rest, steroids, non-steroidal and anti-inflammatory drugs for analgesic purpose, and DMRD in a chronic cases. Antibiotics, antibodies if infection is still persists. No, antibiotics, it should be antibiotics if infection still persists. Rest, NSAID, intra-articular steroid after ruling out infection, systemic corticosteroid also after ruling out bacterial infections, and rarely you require a DMRD groups. Commonest complication you will come across is joint deformity, which will be very commonly seen in rheumatoid, septic and traumatic arthritis. In ankylosing disorders, particularly ankylosing spondylitis will produce fusion of the joints, that is ankylosing. You can see also in case of rheumatoid arthritis, tuberculosis, septic arthritis, and also as a complication of hemarthrosis. And systemic complications are very common in rheumatoid, that is involvement of the lung, kidney, cerebrovascular, coronary arteries. In septicemia and osteomyelitis is very common. And in a gout, CKD and stone formation are quite common. And there are multi more complications which you can come across in a case of a SLE also. So these are the common things which I've shown you. These are the one slide which gives you an outcome of a complications which you can see in person with arthritis, that is dimension wise what are the common complications, subdimension and components. These are the common complication you will see in a person. These are what we call as a take home message. Early diagnosis of arthritis, you can prevent complication of these vital organs. Prevention of deformities, you can prevent in a joint, you can help to decrease the amount of deformity and you can prevent deformities. And prevention of a systemic complications, you can prevent this systemic complications. And early treatment will give you early recovery so that you don't have a deformities, you don't have a systemic complications. So early recovery means no complications. So treatment wise together, I end my lecture here. I hope this will be helpful to you. Again repeating, the most common arthritis you will come across is osteoarthritis. Second common is rheumatoid arthritis. Third common is gout. These three should be looked first. Then look for other like what we call as spondyloarthropathy, reactive arthritis, seronegative, seropositive groups of disorders, etc. So depending upon the conditions, go through that.